Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trauma Uncensored. I am your host, Brooke Shearer, and I am so excited today to welcome to the show Marie Cat Bass. It's actually a really fun story on how I met Cat. In fact, she is the reason that I am currently inked up all over my body, it seems. She was the one who introduced me to Nicole, who is my tattoo artist, and I am forever grateful. However, if this is your first time listening, welcome. We are a podcast that is here to help support and aid people in their journeys from trauma to grief, to loss, to mental health awareness, survival, all of those things. And the podcast was born out of the desire, after having been what I've been through, to create a community for people to feel like they can share, to feel like they're not alone, to gain resources in how to heal. If this is your first time listening, I do encourage you to go back to episode 1. The first 14 or 15 episodes, I describe in detail the journey in which I've been on. So a short story about that. We lost our 9-year-old son, Logan, in 2016 to a distracted driver. It was a horrific, carnage-filled crash that took his life immediately and then put myself, my husband, and our then 5-year-old daughter with critical injuries in the hospital. So the story that I carry on from there talks about the aftermath of that and the trauma that led up to that time, and the civil and criminal trial that happened throughout all of these years. In fact, that the criminal trial actually just, it's only been about a year since it completely finalized. And, the journey from, right before Logan's death to even just a year ago has been full of downs and darkness and just horrible experiences, and also lined with beautiful ways of healing and modalities of healing and experiences of healing. And that's why I'm here today. So again, I do encourage you, if this is your first time, to go back and check out episode 1 titled The Crash. And hopefully you'll make it all the way here to Kat's episode and beyond. If you would like to be a guest, so now we are into primarily having guests or panels on the podcast. So if you would like to share, which I have found that people are really interested, as they listen to the shows, they reach out and they want to tell their story. It's not only, helpful for others, but it's so healing for them in and of themselves. So I do encourage you to use your voice and use this as a platform for your voice if that's something that you are interested. You can look in the show notes. You can email us at hello@traumauncensored.com. Or you can find a link to submit a request down in the show notes as well. Obviously, we would love for you to follow us, leave us a review. This podcast has grown immensely since its beginning in June of this year, 2025. And we would love for it to keep growing so we can continue to help people, and we can offer additional resources and additional opportunities for people to heal. Just a couple disclaimers before we begin. We do talk about grief, loss, trauma, mental health challenges, survival. This is an uncensored podcast. So if you think you might be sensitive to any of it, we do just want you to know that there are going to be topics that are going to be hard to hear, are going to be hard to talk about. And those topics also are what are helping build this community and lead to that healing. I'm also not a therapist. I say that I am experienced in the life of trauma and grief, loss, mental health challenges, survival, all of the things that I listed above. And my experiences have very gratefully given me the opportunity and platform to come and help people. So again, I'm not a therapist, but I do play one on TV. So, yeah, I do, right? And on some sort of TV, on YouTube TV, Spotify TV, right? Also in the show notes, you'll be able to find any sort of additional information links or links that Marie will want to leave behind as resources for everyone who's listening to today's show. And of course, you can find us on all the social media platforms. So be sure to check us out and follow us there. So, that being said, again, today's guest is Marie Cat Bass. So, Marie, I'm probably going to default and call you Marie.
That's
So
totally
you
fine.
feel free to yell at me and say it's
No,
not Marie, it's Cat. So
it's
Cat goes by Cat. There we go. Cat goes by Cat.
yes,
So a little
yes.
bit about Cat. She is a Franklin, Tennessee native. And is a natural horsemanship trainer
Mhm.
specializing in clients with PTSD and is also a successful horse fixer. So I do want to come back to that later
Okay.
and see
Yeah.
what exactly a horse fixer is
Okay.
defined as.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Kat is also a nutritionist who specializes in gut health with a focus on mind, body, spirit, all relating to food. It is their absolute passion to see people become their most peaceful, healthy selves. After surviving years of childhood abuse and trauma that debilitated 2 decades of her adult years, she discovered the letting go method and has been on a beautiful healing journey since. Her passion is teaching peace and freedom to all. So, with that, Kat, I am so excited to have you here. I know
Thank you.
I've read. You've told me and sent me some information
Hmm.
about your story. I know that
Hmm.
it spans over basically over a lifetime. You've told me
Yes.
multiple facets of it, each of them, which I'm just like, holy shit, that poor woman. And I'm also very inspired by what you have told me and what we've talked about in terms of, your healing process and
Yeah.
working with horses and all of that.
Hmm.
So I'm very eager to hear everything. So please start off by telling
Awesome.
us, telling us part of your story. Feel free to start
Yeah.
where you want to start and we'll just go from there.
Go from there. Okay. Well, since briefly you mentioned talking about your story when you were doing your introduction, and one of my all-time favorite quotes, I mean, just I love it so much. It says, tell your story, talk about the things that happened to you. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they would have behaved differently. And that is
Oh,
like,
that's right.
because I think for so long I was afraid to talk about what's happened to me. Like there might be some, backlash, or like I might hurt, relatives' feelings, or, you kind of, well, for me, I just kind of kept it in. And after I read that, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to tell my story. It happened to me. And if they didn't want me to talk about it, they would have behaved differently. And that's just,
Hmm.
to me, like just one of the most beautiful things. But so here I am finally, um really talking about all of it. And I have started a book, and it's taking me a long time, but like you said, it's just been sort of a lifetime of bizarre, circumstances that most people don't have to work through once in their life, much less, 6 times.
Mm.
So yeah, what it- my story, starts so young, like most of us do, where my parents got divorced when I was very little, maybe 3 years old. And my mother quickly remarried. I'm talking like a couple of months. She was remarried. And come to find out now, much, years and years later, he was actually a homosexual, and he married her to please his religious family because they were pressuring him to get a wife because they were all very heavily, very, very, very devout Christians.
And this
So,
was your stepfather, right?
correct,
Your
correct.
stepfather was a homosexual. Yep.
Correct. I refer to him as my mother's husband because I
Okay.
just,
Nope. That is
you know,
totally fair. That
and
is fair enough.
anything father in his title just doesn't, it just doesn't go there. But yes, he was my stepfather on a technical level. And he never stopped being with men. So he cheated on her for their entire marriage, 30, I think 31 years or something, with multiple, multiple, multiple men. And the which cheating is just terrible. But the reason why I emphasize with men is that um, my mother and he are devout Christians and also heavily Republicans, very, very far right. Being a homosexual was the ultimate sin for them. So the probable guilt that he carried or whatever was amplified by, his outward lifestyle of being a devout Christian and very far right wing. In fact, he worked with a lot of government, high up people. So he really had to keep that under wraps, and I think that sort of spurred the abuse. So
Mm.
he would travel a lot because working in politics, he was oftentimes in Washington D.C. So when he would come home from his travels, that's when the abuse would happen. He was very physically violent with me. I grew up in the 80s and early 90s, and back then you could spank your kids all you want with and
Mhm.
never it was never viewed as child abuse. So, we part of this we can say, well, he was disciplining you. Well, you don't discipline a child naked with a leather strap. Like
Oh.
you don't whip them like that. Like it's just there's some like lines that he would cross, and the verbal abuse was oh my god. That to me has been harder to deal with than the physical. Like just the things he would say to me as a little girl. Just
Can you say more about what he would say? Do you
sure. Yeah,
have
like
specific examples that you're willing to share?
sure. I mean, pretty much any time we were in a family setting where he was in town and with us, he would say anything from, "You're stupid, you'll never amount to
Mm.
anything. You'll never be good at anything. Don't try to do that. You're gonna be bad at it. You embarrass me. I'm embarrassed that you're here." Because it was very taboo back then for um Christians to remarry after a divorce. And not only that, but for the one partner to actually have a child, that was very taboo in the 80s in that sort of community. So my mother having me was super embarrassing for him. And it just the constantly being told that no matter what I try, I'm going to be bad at it. Um, was he's just debilitating, really, as a child. And I am a horse trainer, and I've always been into horses. So as a little girl, I was really heavily into horses, and that's a passion, and it's something that I'm really naturally good at. And it was just constant verbal abuse about that, and literally, you name it, he would say, "You're really bad at that. I'm embarrassed." um, and then coupled with going home and beating me essentially.
Mhm.
um, and that lasted. I mean, when I tell you I was terrified of this man, he terrified me. And even him being in my presence, I would shake as a little girl and cry myself to sleep pretty much every night of my life. Um, I was always afraid to do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, be in the wrong place because I knew he would just start hitting me out of nowhere. Um, and it that went on until right after my 18th birthday. Um, this is just a wild thing. I came home with a C, okay, and I made A's and B's, and I came home with a C, and he unleashed a beating on me
Oh.
for getting that C that almost killed me. And fortunately, I was able. Back then we had landlines only, and I was able to call 911 from a landline, so they were able to get my address. And as he was suffocating me into the mud out in the front yard, sitting on me, pushing my face into the mud, trying to kill me. The last thing I saw before I passed out were blue lights, and I knew I was going to be saved. And that was just like such a wonderful moment. And the police literally saved my life. that night for sure. And I left that night
My
and go ahead.
No, 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 you go ahead.
Okay. Well, I left that night, and that sort of started my journey to becoming, an adult immediately at 18. Just boom. Now I'm on my own, but I'm alive, and that kind of started my independence, right there. So moving
And
on
how
from that.
much hate did
Mhm.
he have for himself?
Oh, see,
That
that's the
he I mean,
thing.
this just goes to show, yeah, that much I would be willing to theorize that it was hate for himself, it was shame, it was
Hmm.
guilt. I mean,
Hmm.
especially, you and I are similar in age, so I remember those times very well, and um, having to hide it, or, try to, you know, or hide the sexuality, and to
Right,
be
right.
I mean, who to be embarrassed to have a wife and a child, And where was your
Exactly.
mother in all of this? What role did she play?
You know, my mother was there, but sort of not there. And I can look at her, for years and years, I thought, she abandoned me in those situations. She never tried to do anything or protect me or, stick up for me or anything like that. And for years I was like, she really didn't love me. And that was really
Mm,
hard to grasp. When I look at her, I feel like she was sort of fighting for her life as well.
mm,
And in so many different ways, she's dealing with, you know, a sexless marriage because he was gay, he didn't want anything to do with her. And I think she was dealing with her own abandonment and rejection from that. And she had her own stuff going on. I really do. I let that go. I'm not a big forgiveness person. And I can go into that if you want, but forgiveness is a weird term to me. I feel like it was made up by religion, and it's sort of permission. In a lot of ways it can be permission for somebody to either continue acting the way they are, or for you to say it's okay. Well, it's not okay.
yeah.
And
Well, and
so
I've always heard or been taught in this journey, and believe it wholeheartedly now, that forgiveness isn't for them. It's not for those motherfuckers. It's for you.
right,
It's for
right, right.
you to be able to say, you know what, this happened to me, right? This happened to me, and it was not my fault.
That's
And
right.
I don't need to carry this with me any longer, right? And so I think forgiveness in the word, because I have a hard time with forgiveness too, in terms of forgiving people who have hurt me, or the guy who killed our son, or any of that.
Right, right.
And if I don't have forgiveness for myself, then I
Mhm.
walk around with that poison continually in my body, and it just eats away and eats
Mhm.
away. So have
Mhm.
you found, like, even without the forgiveness, you know, with him, do you feel like you've found some sort of forgiveness, or we can replace the word forgiveness if you want,
Mhm.
with peace?
Yes.
Because I don't think that they're mutually exclusive.
They're not. And that's part of my whole healing journey with the letting go method. It's a
Mm,
it, it-
mhm.
Michael Singer is actually the person that I learned it from. I don't know if you're familiar, but he is a yogi. He's a public figure. He's phenomenal. And um, the Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment. Those are two of his books that have been pretty huge. But he talks about going back to that child in those moments as the memories come to you, and walking with that child through that memory. And
Mm,
after you
mhm,
do that, you can watch that memory go through your body and out. So I watch it go through my feet and out of myself with in my mind's eye. After I go, so for instance, I might have I might be laying in bed and I might have a specific memory of the time I finished a horse show, and I was maybe 7 years old, and I thought I did so good, and I was so proud of myself, and he was right there immediately to tell me what a piece of shit I am, and how terrible I did, and how I should never ride horses, and we should sell that horse, and you're awful. Okay. So in that memory, in my mind's eye, I go to that little girl, and I'll even like touch my chest, and I'll say, "You didn't deserve that. I'm so sorry he said those things. You were really, really good. And you did a really, really good job. And that horse was a pain in the ass, and you rode her so well.
Mhm.
And I'm so proud of you." And then in my mind's eye, I see her in that moment like smile and be like so excited. And then I watch the memory leave my body. So as
That's
I go,
amazing.
it's phenomenal. It has been, when I tell you I have spent 2 decades in therapy. Who knows how many thousands of dollars I have spent doing this method has healed me in such greater ways than spending all of that, which I'm not against therapy whatsoever. I'm for it. This specific method for me has healed my little girl. Like, she runs around in life and is so happy and playful and secure, and she's safe and she's confident and she's beautiful. And so now that I have that new memory of her, I can walk forward as a confident, secure, peaceful, happy adult. And that, to me, instead of coexisting with your trauma, it's letting go. And that's why I call it the
Letting go.
letting
Mhm.
go method. And so I will still, I mean, for 2 straight years, all I did was do that every day of my life when a memory would pop up. And it's not like you go searching for the memories, you let them come to you. And as they would come to me, I would go back to that little girl. We would have that same conversation. The memory would leave my body. So now there's a new memory in my body of her doing amazing at the horse show and her being really happy after. And it's just like reprogramming, what you felt. And then it's important to let that go, because you also don't want to, in my experience, you also don't want to hold on to really, really good memories, because you compare that, and that's a whole
Mm,
nother,
mhm.
a
That's
whole
fair.
nother thing. But yeah, so yes, when you say, do you have peace or have you forgiven yourself, that is the process that I use, to to
I
to
would
forgive.
I would for sure love to definitely talk more about that, whether it's in
Yeah.
this episode or if you come back. And because
Yeah.
I think this is really important information. And I know that our listeners are, and I specifically really want to hear more of your story and what led to this. But there's something so important about people understanding that inner child work
Mm,
is everything
it's
for heal. It's not
everything.
the only thing, but and for me,
Hmm.
I've done so much trauma work, but I've never gotten around to really focusing in on the inner child until
Hmm.
this summer. I started this summer, and it is a work in progress, and it's very
It
hard, and it's
is
very hard to
very
let
hard.
go of those experiences when you've built your life. I mean, everything
Yep.
that I do and have done in the past is my inner child protecting
That's right.
herself
That's right.
because of what she has been through. And
That's
I
right.
know that in order for me to change, right, in order for me to move forward, to let go of so many things, find forgiveness for those others within myself, I have to be able to. I mean, it'll stem back, and I'm not going to get into all my stories, but it does stem back all the way back to my dad, right? And I still have
Mm,
a problem forgiving himself for me, because there's so much anger still that I
mhm,
carry, and I
mhm.
know that the freedom from that anger is tending to that inner child
That's right.
and releasing it. So I am, yes, and I know you do work with clients, correct?
Mhm. Yes. With
Yep.
horses,
So
you
I
mean?
would yeah, with horses,
Yeah.
but
Uh-huh.
even the letting go method, do you
Oh,
integrate that
no.
into working?
I
No?
I haven't used that. I mean, I do teach my people to do that, but I I don't want to. I haven't really played around with how to bring Michael Singer's work into my own. Like, I really just still want to be like pointing people to him. I don't want to in any way take credit for any of that. I really want people to understand, like, if you want to do what I'm doing, here's what I read, and here's how to do it. But I'm not. Does that make sense?
And
I'm
no,
not.
it does. Yeah, no, absolutely, because it's not your material.
Right. Right.
And even just by making people aware of it and the theory behind it, you're
Right.
already planting
That's
those
exactly right.
seeds,
That's
you
exactly
know?
right. That's what I love
So
to
yeah,
do, yeah.
I would love to definitely talk more about that again. Whether
Mhm,
if we have time at the end of this, or I know there's so much to your story that I don't think this is
mhm.
going to be a one and done episode. So that just gives listeners and viewers an opportunity to kind of sit on pins and needles until we can have
Mhm.
Kat back on. So let me circle
Yeah.
back around to your childhood. So
Mhm.
your mother. So we were talking about your mother. Do you
Yes.
believe that your mother was aware of what was going on with you? And what is your relationship like with her today?
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I think the way she was raised in a military home where everything was very strict and very white and black. I don't think, in fact, and I may be a little bit off on this, but I think the first time her mother told her that she loved her was on her deathbed when she was like,
Mm,
a gram like dying as an old woman. I think she finally told my mother that she loved her. So my mom didn't grow up in a warm, cozy, loving environment. Her life was very cold. And I think she was aware of what he was doing. And in her defense, I don't think she thought it was that bad. I really think she
no.
was like, this is just normal. This is how, fathers treat daughters. It's because it was probably how her father treated her.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I have to like with my mother. I love her so much, and I have accepted her just where she's at. And she's honestly never been able to like accept or embrace my pain. Whenever I talk about my childhood, she's kind of like, no, 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 it wasn't that bad. That didn't happen. Or, she's very dismissive to my pain. And I've had to just sort of accept her where she's at, and take the relationship the way it is. We get along really well. I would not say that it's like your typical mother daughter. Like, I don't call her when I'm upset. She's not the first person I run to. It's not like your typical loving mother and daughter situation, but I have been able to just accept her as who she is, enjoy her when I do get time with her, and be like super grateful for what we have, because I think what we have is just as good as it's going to be on this earth, this lifetime. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah, I
So,
do.
but
And it's
that took a
actually
long time.
it's very inspiring actually, because I know very many people who do not have that mindset. It's a boundary is created, and a boundary can create, um, distance and
Hmm.
estrangement,
It
and
can.
it can. And that I think shows a very high level of healing for you to be able to
And
do that.
speaking to that, I actually did take 10 years where I did not speak to her.
Really.
It was probably from maybe 30 to 40, or maybe 28 to 38. Anyways, it was a decade where I felt like the only way that I could heal, I hadn't learned about the letting go method yet. I was still heavily in therapy, and I felt like the only way that I was going to heal it was kind of putting up that boundary, as you would say, distancing myself from her, and giving
Hmm.
myself space. And while that was probably good for me in a lot of ways, it also it wasn't necessary. If I would have known what I know now and been able to just go back and love on my little girl self, I won't. You stop being angry. My
Yeah.
that little girl is so happy, so why am I mad? She's fine, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm not mad at my mom anymore, and so it's just and so I think that's how you get there. But I just wanted to mention, I did do that. I did put up that boundary, and I did take a decade off of having anything to do with her, and that was really difficult because she was very close to my ex-husband. So,
Mm.
knowing that my mother was at all of the soccer games and the Thanksgivings and the Christmases because she was with my ex-husband, that was hard. 10 years of watching her from afar was really difficult.
Yeah.
As
I can imagine.
yeah, it was just,
Yeah, I can imagine.
and also me not wanting my kids to hate her. I did not want, it was a hard balance of like, yeah, you should be close to your grandmother, you should love her, but them saying, well, why don't you love her?
Mhm.
Why aren't you hanging out with her? And that was a hard thing to navigate, when they were little. So my boys are all adults now. Just to throw that out
I
there.
was gonna ask how old are your sons? You have all
So
boys, right?
I have all boys. My oldest is 24, and then we go down to 20 for the next one, and then 17 for the third.
Wow.
So,
So he's
yeah.
about ready to fly the nest, huh? Last
He
one.
actually that one plays semi-pro soccer in Florida already.
Wow.
So he's already
Wow.
going. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, what's it like
Mhm.
to be an empty nester? I've got a
It's the
freshman and I'm like,
weirdest.
"Oh."
It is the weirdest thing. There's no, I don't have words right now for it because it's a very new thing. He just left, about 2 months ago, really, is when he left to go down there. So it's a very fresh thing for me, and it's hard when I normally text him, and you know we do everything together, and now it's like, he's so far
Yeah.
away. But
Well, and see, and I have a 6-year-old as well. So I got some time.
you have some time.
40. I'm
Yeah.
almost 45 and I got a 6-year-old. So I'm like, but I dread when Mallory flies the
Oh,
coop.
I
She's like,
know,
I'm
and
going to live with
especially a
you forever.
girl.
And I'm like, yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see. I know. I
a
know.
girl
I
too.
know.
Like, it's different, I bet, just you're closer, I bet. So
We are,
that's
I mean, I'm very fortunate. We are definitely very close.
I love
So
that.
I am curious. I am curious in two different regards to what you had experienced as a child. I'm curious as to how that formulated your relationships
Yeah.
moving forward, not just with your family, but when you
Mhm.
got into, your marriage. I know that, you had
Mhm.
said that you're divorced,
Mhm.
but even with, raising your children, how did that
Mhm.
shape? Was it, has it always, well, obviously, if, with being divorced, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you probably carried a lot of that trauma into your marriage,
Yes.
and
Yes.
finding who you chose and how
Mhm.
the marriage
Mhm.
went. But I am also curious to know how those experiences shaped shaped you as a mother when you became a parent, and if it was
Mhm.
something that gradually changed over time as you healed, or if you found yourself taking some of those toxic behaviors and acting on them as well.
Mhm.
um, so
Yeah.
you feel free to start, I whichever way you want to
Yeah.
go.
Well, I got married super, super young. I think I was sort of being raised under the ideology or whatever that women don't have careers, women stay home, they raise babies, women stay home and they shut up, and that's
Mm.
how I was raised, and that's the just so I basically, was like, well, I got to get married as soon as possible and do what I'm supposed to do. That's what women do. And that was, what I did. So I rushed it. And I had no idea who I was. And I'm walking around angry. I'm angry at my mother's husband. I'm angry at my mother for abandoning me. I'm just angry. I'm just this little ball of anger. And I know that was definitely a big part of my marriage failing. I also happened to marry an avoider. So
Mm,
that blend just, because as soon as I would feel something, I'm boom attacking because I'm so angry. And as an avoider, he would disappear. So it was just
mm,
that for so many years that um and and then until we finally agreed that it would be better if we were apart. Um
mm.
so,
Now,
but
did
yes,
you left home at 18? You had packed up, or you'd
I
mentioned
did.
you'd left home. You'd packed up. Did
Hmm.
you I mean, what was that like? And where did you start after you left home? And then how long was it before, or what was the lead up like before meeting your husband or I'm sorry, your ex-husband?
Yeah, yeah. We got married when I was 23, he was 21. Um, I I worked really hard just to, survive. I had this the worst thing is being raised that women just are stay-at-home moms. I had no idea if I didn't know what to do. Do I women don't go to college, just I didn't have any sort of vision or like a future of like maybe I should pursue a career or, go get a degree. That was so out of my wheelhouse. And I basically just did the best I could to pay bills and survive until I could find a husband, essentially. Um,
Mhm.
and, I just, that's, it breaks my heart to see, other girls doing that same thing, not discovering who they really are, what they're passionate about, like what they believe in, and what they're good at, and just sort of rushing to another person to, have some sort of identity in just a relationship. So I completely did that. I definitely Evan and I met on a blind date, and we were married 4 months later. It was
Wow.
just, yes, it was just so fast. I just was basically like, yes, I'll marry him, and then boom, let's do it. Um and it was just way too fast, and you know just
Do you feel like you were looking to potentially fill some sort of hole,
like oh,
to
for sure, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, by marrying him so quickly? I mean, with something you were trying to fill something that you either didn't get or you
Hmm.
learned, or
I
would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think mostly, ironically, what I was trying to do was please my mom so that she would
Oh.
love me. Hmm.
Mhm.
So I thought if I get married like a woman is supposed to do, my mother will view me as like a success. And that's what I wanted. I just wanted her. I didn't really. They say, people talk about father wounds so much, and they are very real. But my mother wounds, I think, were a lot harder to work through back then. And so I thought, now, and my ex husband at the time was a pastor. Okay. So, I was like, oh, this is so perfect because my mother's a
Mhm.
devout Christian, and
Mm.
she thinks that women, need to be married and stay home and, raise kids. And I'm like, boom, I got it. Now she's gonna love me. And it took me a really, really long time post divorce to even figure out that that's what I did. So when you talk about where was I trying to fill a void, I think yes, I was trying to get my mother's acceptance. And then I thought, and then she'll love me and it'll be great and we'll have a good relationship. And you live in this fairyland when in your head. Um,
Yeah, I
so
hear I hear all of that. I'm curious how many people actually aren't trying to fill a void
I
or
know,
carry
I
on what
know.
they've learned or been exposed to, when
Mm-hmm.
they get married. I mean, obviously
Mm-hmm.
I would never I don't regret, any of the choices that I made, especially when it comes to having the children, but if I
Yeah.
were to look at my younger self now, man, I would have waited until I was older and more. I mean, I
Yes.
could have worked on those
Yes.
inner child wounds and
Yep.
could have healed and understood, how I was
Mhm.
raised to be codependent and a caretaker, and, you know, fear of abandonment and fear, like,
That's right.
if I didn't have someone, then who am I? Then I'm not enough,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
that,
Find it.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And that's, yeah, I mean, that's what carried me pretty much, my has carried me my entire life until, and like you said, it wasn't until years after your divorce that you started to have that
Mhm.
aha moment.
That's
And it's
right.
only been recently for me that I've been like, oh shit,
Mm,
it's,
mhm.
I see all of these things now and why I've acted the way and behaved the way and, met certain situations. And it's hard. It's really
Yes.
hard to really look at yourself like that under a microscope.
Mm, I
Really
know.
very hard.
That yes. Yes, that was a lot. And my choice, or not choice, but me being that way affected my ex-husband so much too. Like, he's collateral damage, and that's not,
Mm,
and
mhm.
and he has his own things that he needed to man up about, and whatnot. But I'm owning my part and saying, wow, he didn't deserve that. Like, geez, he deserved a healthy woman that could love him really well. And I just wasn't that. That's not who I
Yeah.
was. So it's like, you don't realize how much you're affecting another human being too, by not, you know, working on that inner child, making sure that you're super peaceful, before you partner up with another human, and bring
Right.
them into it, because you're bringing
Right.
them
I
into
mean,
it.
it I think it took the death of Logan and work after that for both Jordan and myself to really understand the childhood wounds and all of the trauma from our childhood that
Mm,
came in and um
mm,
or had played a part in everything the entire time. And I do get curious, I get curious as to if many people actually recognize the fact that their relationships are, the way that they move and the way that um, things are brought to the table in marriages and relationships are probably primarily from what they've learned growing up. And then they just, don't mesh. And that's the thing is, you're claiming the responsibility. I guarantee you your ex-husband also had his own shit that played a part in it. And at the end of the day, it's taking accountability, right? It's not blaming the other person. I like to use the phrase now, projection is reflection, because I
mhm.
believe that as people are projecting onto their partners or really anyone, they're just reflecting, what's hurting inside of them. Are you judging
Mhm,
someone for putting too much on their plate, which I've
mhm.
heard recently way too much. And I'm like, don't don't judge me because you don't know what's going on with me. By you judging me, however, that's just a reflection on how you're feeling inside. Are you
Yeah,
feeling inadequate? Are you feeling, and I really do believe that that's where people, when they're getting into it and they're pointing fingers and they're blaming and they're yelling, it's because their hurts are what are coming to the table. And it's about taking accountability. Like, you cannot just say it's on the other person, right?
yeah,
You can't just say that the other person is the one who's at fault and I'm right and you're wrong. It has to be both of you. And I think that's where a lot of things go awry, is because we aren't taught to see those dualities within
mhm,
within a
mhm,
relationship. I mean, and the relationship could be anything. It could be a marriage, it could be a friendship, it could be a work relationship. It doesn't have to just be for love.
mhm.
Um, so
Yeah.
tell me how that all played a part in your experiences then with, having the children, and what ended you guys figuring out that you were better off apart and so on.
Yeah, at the time of our divorce, he had stopped being a pastor. We were involved in the church heavily for the first 4 years of our marriage, and then he stepped down from that and decided he wanted to pursue something different. And so he found some investors and was trying to open up these medical clinics. Well, the one that he was focused on was in Alabama, so he basically moved to Alabama for the last like 3 years of our marriage. And that to me just felt so lonely, and I was definitely a single mom even married. I just, having him be in Alabama and us here in Franklin, it was just I was I was exhausted, but I was also lonely and confused. So we decided then that, like, if you're going to pursue this company in Alabama and I'm going to be here, like, let's just go ahead and get separated and work towards a divorce, because this is just no way to live for either one of us. And so it was very amicable when we both just agreed. Like, event, it was just like, okay, yeah, this is the time. This is what we need to do. And we really wanted to be able to co-parent really well at that point in time. That was our desire, was let's be friends. We talked about still doing holidays together and just, all of the stuff. There wasn't any sort of like animosity or crazy. There was nothing crazy that happened. It was just a very mutual, separation. And then it wasn't but maybe 9 or 10 months later, he announced to all of us that he was going on The Bachelorette. And that is when our lives took a serious turn.
Mm,
Yes, that was definitely shocking. We didn't, it was just like, you're what? And
uh-huh.
so he did 2 seasons on reality TV, and that really changed the trajectory of how we co-parented and how my boys felt about life. And that was a really, really difficult um, season. He did marry the girl from the show, but they're now divorced. So anyway, that's just been that was a whole journey in and of itself that was
Can you
difficult to
say
walk through.
more can you say more though about
Yeah.
how that, I mean, affected you and your children?
Yes. So the first about 12 weeks of filming, he has to have no contact. Now,
Mm.
that being said, we were used to him being in Alabama anyway. So it wasn't like that big of a deal. But it was hard to explain to the boys, like, your dad is on a dating show.
Yeah.
And, your dad's on a dating show. He's not allowed to call us. I had a couple meltdowns with my oldest son during the time, who was going through puberty. And that was a bit of a struggle. And all I wanted to do was to be able to call my ex-husband, and you can't. And it was just a long time of like no contact and not knowing what was going on. And then whenever that was over, um him, marrying the girl from the show, he wanted to change I remember him coming back in town from that second filming, and a sheriff being on my porch with a subpoena or something for me to go to court, because he wanted to change the parenting plan. Like, immediately it was like, okay, I'm
Oh.
married. Yes, he was like, I'm married, I want the kids, like it. And I was like, who are you? Like, what is going on? And it just was. So then I had to fight him in court for, a year. And I was just like, wait a minute, we decided everything was going to be amicable and good. And this has been wild. This has been a wild ride. Um, so the boys, and then the for whatever reason, he chose to allow our boys to watch the show on his
Oh,
time.
no.
And
Oh,
when I
no.
tell you, my boys are scarred for life, they are scarred for life. Like, the way, just the drama and the craziness, and them watching their dad go through that on national television was really, really, really hard for them. really
I'm
hard.
sure. And what was it
Yeah,
teaching them as well? You
I
know,
know. I know.
what did that implant into
I
their own?
know.
I mean, that's, that's another angle of trauma too. It might be a little T, a little trauma versus a big
Yep.
trauma,
Yep.
but
Yep.
those still all build up into big traumas in the long run.
Definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah, but he has two adorable, amazing little kids from that marriage, and so some good came out of it. And
no, that's good.
yeah, they
Do you
both
have a
seem to be
relationship with them?
with his kids, his
Uh-huh.
new kids.
Mhm.
I mean, I say hi to them and stuff when I see them, like at soccer games. But I don't have like a relationship with them.
Got
um
it.
no, no, maybe when they're older. They're very, very young. So but I do have a good relationship with my ex-husband, so that's good. We finally
That's
found
good.
our yes, we found our plateau, so we're good, you know.
That's
But
good because that had to be really, really hard to watch. I mean, I
so
don't know if you watched
girl,
it, but
I
even
did
just
not. I did
knowing,
not. No,
good
I
for you.
refused. I
Good for
refused.
you.
I've still to this
Good
day
for you.
never seen it. So,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
and it's a curiosity of mine what he was feeling, what he was hurting from, the pain that he had going on that encouraged him to even do
Do that.
that,
I
you know?
know. I know.
You guys were divorced at the time by then, right? Or were
Barely.
you still
We
barely?
were divorced, but barely. It was I think, we were it might have been 9 months after our divorce that he signed up for it. So, it was very quick, but yeah.
So what out of, the experiences with your mom's husband and with your ex-husband, um, how do you approach relationships today? You are not remarried, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And so how has it changed you in terms of being out there and meeting other people? I mean, do you have like immediate red flags that pop up, or
Mhm.
do you know enough about yourself now that you're like, I can test these waters and I'm not willing to cross certain boundaries? How has that shaped how you are today?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's both happy and sad. I feel like, and I'm going to jump over something for a second, and we might come back to it, but I feel like the best relationship that I've had of my adult life, and I've been divorced for 13 years. So it's been a long time. So since then I have dated. And the most amazing relationship that I think I probably, my dream relationship was completely sabotaged by me still not knowing why I'm so angry.
Mm,
And it's incredible to talk to men now, being on dating apps or whatever, just meeting new people and them saying to me, I just don't understand why my ex-wife just was so angry. There's like an angry girl pandemic, like it's we have so much trauma that we're holding inside of ourselves, and we literally take it out on our mate. Now, I'm not saying that by any means men are perfect. Okay, don't go there, but I'm just saying, like, I do feel like I talk to so many people that say, I just don't understand the verbal craziness coming out of that woman. And I was one of them. And
mhm,
it just was me still being so angry for that little girl that was so heavily abused for her entire childhood, and me having no idea um why that was the case. Now, to jump back um really quickly, in between that amazing relationship that I feel like was sabotaged, in between that and my marriage, I dated someone that seemed amazing, like smart and funny and kind and charismatic and outgoing, and really pursued me. At first, I wasn't interested in him, and he pursued me for probably 5 months before I caved. and was finally like, okay, I'll date you, fine. Like he was just really into me, really kind. And it wasn't until we started spending nights together where he would drink that the violence started coming out.
Oh no.
And this particular relationship did end with me in the hospital.
Oh my
And that
gosh.
and that was like, and what's actually beautiful about this time in my life is when I thought I was going to die. I thought I had a brain bleed. So I was in the hospital, and I was terrified, and I had never been in, my the way that my mother's husband physically abused me, it was just all of that again, coming
Mhm.
back as an adult. And that actually started my journey with the letting go method. That time in my life, that relationship, I knew that he was going to kill me. My father, my real father, my biological father told me, he's going to kill you. I need you to get out of this. You need to be safe. Like, he's going to kill you. Everybody that was in my tight circle, like, the amazing thing about someone like that is that they are so kind and so apologetic and so sweet and so sincere when they're sober, or when they're not freaking out with anxiety, that you really want to give them you it pulls out this mercy part in our spirit that's like, okay, I want to help you. I want to love you. And then one thing will set them off, and they are completely another person. So going through the domestic violence and living through that, and walking through how to even leave him,
Mhm.
was so hard and so life changing. It was in that moment, in that situation, that I decided to figure out what is real, what is not. And that's when I actually left Christianity, and I poured myself into finding out what spirituality really is, and what am I doing to be put in these situations where people are always hurting me. And I dove into this journey of learning about the letting go method and healing that little girl. That's when all of that started. And it's been like a 5-year journey, thing. I mean, it's ongoing, and it will probably continue to go on, because there will be random memories that come up that I walk through. And what's really cool about the letting go is it doesn't even it can I have walked through memories of my adult self. That girl that was beat up by that man, I've had to go back to her, as a 37-year-old or whatever, and say, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. You didn't deserve
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
As that woman too, and then letting that go. So it's something that I practice, for all stages of my life, and not just, the little girl that was so abused. But so this thing is just when the trauma lives in you and it stays there, it will sabotage everything good that is in your life, whether it's friendships, relationships with, romantic interests, or family members, or even your work.
Yep,
I know
1,000% agree,
a
1,000%.
1,000%. And you're not living to your full potential, and you're not living in peace and happiness when you're just freaking angry all the time about you
I
don't
know.
even know what.
I know.
So
Or you do know what, and you're just too afraid to face it. And
yeah, yeah,
that's a real thing too, because this shit is hard.
that's
Facing it
true.
and doing that work, it is so hard. And,
Hmm.
everybody has a choice, right? Face
Hmm.
it and do the work and live, right? Be able to say
Hmm.
that you're living, or let it consume you. And that's where you are in life. And you have the potential to lose all things. And,
Hmm.
you know, I wish I could just pick strength and pass it along to all the people,
I know.
that need it. I really do,
Hmm.
because it's not, we only have one chance, and and we're going to have those types of experiences too. I am so sorry you went through that. And you have the ability to see what it's done for your life.
Yes.
All of
Yes.
these traumas, if we allow ourselves to learn how to heal through them and embrace them, will show us what we're supposed to do in that next step of our journey. And, I think it's amazing. I would definitely, we didn't get to talk about, your equine, the horses. So I would love to have you back for that. I know
Okay. Yeah.
that has been, a part of my healing journey. And, while I don't love it as much as some other people, I know there are people who just, you know, it does wonders for them. But then also talking more about the letting go and, how
Hmm.
you work with clients. So that would be another, if you're open to it,
Yeah. I would love that.
another show. And because I
Hmm.
think it's good to hear people are happy to hear, one side of the coin with the experience, and then how they take that and do better, do better
Yeah.
for others with it. And, so before we
Yeah.
go, I do have one question that I was
Okay.
hoping you could answer. For those out there now going through, whether it be, a child in an abusive relation, or, with any sort of abusive relationship right now, or an adult who's in some sort of, a verbal or mental or physical abuse, um, having experienced what you have, what would you want them to know in this moment?
Mm. I think one of the hardest parts of that lifestyle is the leaving, where women are so afraid to leave, and they're afraid of what that looks like with joint custody, or even where they're going to live. Or for me, I had three children of my own at the time, and I knew that if I left him, you know, I was I going to be able to put a roof over my kids' heads? Like the leaving is so terrifying and it's debilitating. And I think um, if I could just say anything to these precious people, is that you are going to be okay on the other side. And leaving seems really scary, but it's like life saving, and it's the right thing. And the other side is actually not as scary as it seems. It's really, really not. It's beautiful, it's peaceful. And you know what else I want to tell these precious people, and I want to say women, but men are being abused too. I'm not,
Mhm.
you know, these people that are being abused, starting from what you feel like scratch is actually really, really cool. And
Mhm.
you're not starting from nothing, you're starting with experience. And so it feels so dark and so scary. And it's really that little leap that you take to do that that will be the best decision you've ever made of your entire life. um Unequivocally.
That is really great advice, for those of you out there who are find yourself in this position now. I think Kat's words are absolutely gold. Is there a place where people can reach out to find you if they need to talk?
Sure.
Is that
Oh,
something that?
absolutely. I would
Yeah,
love that.
where
Do you want to list my Instagram handle? Would that be the
I can
best
do that.
way?
I'll put that in the show
Okay.
notes. Yep, I'll put
Yeah.
your Instagram handle.
Yeah.
And of course, if anybody listening needs extra support or any sort of help, feel free
Hmm.
to email us at trauma or hello@traumauncensored.com as well. That's down in the show notes, but I will also put Marie's down there, especially if you're local to Nashville, and are interested in the equine. But again, I will
Yeah.
have equine being horses. I will have Marie back on to talk more about that, because there is beauty in healing with horses. It
Mm-hmm.
absolutely is. They're amazing creatures. So, all right, Kat. Well, I am so thankful and grateful for you
Thank you.
sharing everything you did today. And I know that there are going to be tons of people out there who are going to resonate and also very much appreciate and feel less alone. So,
Good. That's
uh,
the
bef-
point.
bef-
I love that.
before we go, do you have anything else to add?
Oh, I just want to say thank you, Brooke, so much for having
Oh,
me and for doing
absolutely.
this podcast. It is awesome, and I just want you to keep going.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
And if you know anybody, or if anybody out there listening knows themselves or anybody else who would like to come on and share their story, as Kat has very bravely and gratefully done, then definitely send us an email or check out the show notes. So, with that, this has been another episode of Trauma Uncensored. We'll see you next time.